trying to learn how to walk after our Yahweh and be diligent about it. Okay? This week's Torah portion is Vayira, and it means, and I appeared, because early in the passage, Yahweh says to Moses, and I appeared to Abraham. Okay? And I appeared to Abraham. So that's where this starts. And that's an artist's rendition of how they think maybe the city where Pharaoh lived looked like. All right. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but gives us an idea. All right. Now, where we leave the story last time? Well, the story last time was Pharaoh had said, "Nah, you're crazy. I'm not letting those people go." And not only that, but I'm gonna double their workload because they've got too much time to whine and complain. Your mom ever do that to you? It's like, you're fighting. I got a job for you to do. Too much time on your hands? You do that, Angie? Yeah. I know my mom did it to me. She's like, you time to fight with your sister? Here, churn some butter. You ever churn butter? It takes forever. Yeah, and you turn it like this. There's a big jar, and there's a handle here, and you turn like this, and you keep turning and turning until finally it turns into butter. Yeah, no fun. All right. So, I digress. Where we leave it off? Well, people are making bricks without straw now, and they're complaining. They're like, Moses, you came in here and told us that we were going to get set free, and nothing has happened except our lives have gotten worse, not better. And so what does Moses do? Moshe goes to Yahweh and he prays. And he's not too timid about it. He says, "For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all." He's kind of yelling at God, isn't he? And you know what God says? Stand back there. Stand back there. Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. So God's ready to act now. And he said to Moshe, remember who I am. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I have promised the land of Canaan to you and to your people. Remember who I am, and go tell the people to remember who I am. He wants them to remember the promise he made to their great-great-grandfather, Abraham. Okay? So Moses said this to the people of Israel, but they wouldn't listen. Why? Because they were so discouraged, and their slavery was so cruel. I think this is a really good lesson for us to take home with us. If there's one thing in this Torah portion that stands out to me, it's this right here. When we're having a hard time and we're looking at the world around us, it's really, really hard to hear the voice of Yahweh. The people did not hear the voice of Yahweh because all they were doing was looking at the hard work and the hardships they had in their lives, and they were discouraged. Do you know what discouraged means? It means you kind of give up, right? Hopeless. Okay? So we got to watch it. If we start feeling hopeless and discouraged because of what's going on in our lives, then it makes it really hard to hear the voice of God. But God still acted on their behalf. Now that's quite the critter, isn't it? Says that Moses and Aaron went in front of Pharaoh. And most translations will say that they threw down Moses' staff and it turned into a snake, right? And then the magicians did the same thing. And Moses' snake ate the magician's snake, right? That's usually how it's told. However, there is a possible other way to tell the story. The rabbis really can't agree on it. Because the word there, and I'm going to massacre it probably, but I think it's taninin. And it means monster, kind of. And the idea is, I looked up every time that this word shows up in the Old Testament, Sometimes, a lot of times, it's written dragon in our language. It's interpreted as dragon. Sometimes it's whale. Sometimes it's jackal. Sometimes it's crocodile. It's weird, isn't it? Yeah. So this is kind of a strange word. It kind of means, and then sea monster. Sometimes it's translated sea monster. So we're not exactly sure what Moses' staff turned into, but most people agree that it probably was a serpent or a snake. So why would the magicians make their own snakes? Yeah. Pharaoh thinks that Moses is just, there was a lot of occult practices in Egypt. They did magic tricks all the time. Pharaoh was not impressed. He's like, I've seen this trick before. It's just another magic trick. And so he has his magicians do the same thing. It's like, I'm not impressed with your God. We can do this. No big deal. Okay? So then the plagues start. And the first plague, Moses goes down to the river, and he stretches his staff over the Nile River, turns into blood, and all the fish die. In fact, it wasn't just in the river. You see that? It was in there. It was in pitchers that they had of water. Everything that was water turned to blood. It wasn't just in the river. Well, you know what? Pharaoh's magicians could do that too. I don't know why they would want to take what little water they had and turn it into blood too. That doesn't seem too bright to me, but Pharaoh wanted to prove that it was just a magic trick, and he was impressed with the God of Moshe. So the next plague was frogs. And there was a lot of frogs. There was a lot of frogs. They were in the food. They were jumping in your bed. Look at that kid's eating a frog sandwich. Okay. There was a lot of frogs. And you know what? Pharaoh's magicians could make the frogs come too. Huh. Just another magic trick. It's interesting here, though. Notice something. Remember in the previous one? Let's go back. The fish died in the river. They just died, and the people of Egypt just dealt with the stinky fish on the banks and floating in the water, okay? And it says that when this plague was over, the frogs died, and the people of Egypt piled them up in great, big, giant piles, and they smelled bad. The whole land of Egypt smelled bad because of the stinky dead frogs, okay? This is going to be important, so remember that part, all right? Lots and lots of frogs, okay? Now, plague number 3, there's a little bit of disagreement among the rabbis about exactly what this plague is. If you go back and look at the Hebrew word, it indicates an insect. It's definitely a plague of insect that makes you itch. Okay, that seems to be the connotation of the word. And so some translations will render it lice. You know about head lice, right? Yeah, not great stuff. Makes your head itch. Yeah. And gnats. Gnats can make you itch too. So it was either lice or gnats, not really sure which, but it's some kind of nasty insect that made everybody itch. Okay? And when the plague was over, there's really no comment as to what happened to the gnats or the lice. They must have just kind of died off on their own. Not sure. Okay? And then we get to plague number 4. And most Bibles, most translations will say it was a plague of flies. But there is a significant portion of the rabbis who say, no, I don't think it was flies. I think it was wild animals. The Hebrew word there is arob, something that swarms. And it gives the connotation as something that swarms and bites. So, and it might have been, think that it was wild beasts, like the picture up there, all kinds. And some think it was snakes and scorpions. Yeah, I didn't put a picture of those up there because that's scary. Okay? But there's a couple of things to note about this. On this plague, when the plague was over, God took all of whatever it was, away. He didn't leave it there. It didn't die. It wasn't in big piles like the frogs. It wasn't floating in the river like the fish. Whatever it was, God took it away, and says there was none found left in the land. That's why some of the rabbis think it was the animals, especially like maybe leopards or tigers, because the people of Egypt prized the hides. Like the fur, they make clothing out of the fur of the animals. And so God didn't want to leave them behind so the Egyptians could make fur out of them, fur coats and stuff. Okay? So that's just a thought. But the other important thing here is none of this happened in Goshen, where the people of Israel were. And none of the other plagues going forward do either. And then there was the plague of the livestock, and all the livestock died. Now, this is really sad, but it's also really important, because in that culture, your wealth was directly tied to how many animals you owned. So God took away all of their wealth. All right? But you see the hill there in the middle? That's Goshen. None of the animals in Goshen died. And Pharaoh even went out to see to make sure. None of the animals in Goshen died. And then there was plague number 6, and that was the boils. And Yahweh told Moshe, take handfuls of soot from the kiln and let Moses throw them in the air in the sight of Pharaoh. And so Moses took a bunch of ashes and soot, that black stuff you get when you burn, and he threw it up in the air. And it caused these horrible sores called boils on man and beast. Well, I don't know how many beasts were left, but we got a cat up there. Cat would be considered livestock, so it probably didn't die in the previous plague. But now it got boils. Great, yeah. And the magicians, by the way, haven't been able to do any of these things. They couldn't make gnats or lice. Ever since they made the frogs, they haven't been able to make anything else. So Pharaoh's starting to get a clue now that this isn't just some magic trick. And then there was the plague of hail. And the hail was so big and so violent that if anybody was outside, they didn't listen to the warning. Moses warned them. He says, this plague of hail is coming, and if you want to save your lives and the lives of your animals, you better bring them inside. As some people did, and some people didn't. And the people who stayed outside and their livestock stayed outside, they all died. The hail was terrible. And not only was there hail, but there was thunder and lightning. I mean, it was a terrible storm. You ever had a really terrible storm and just really kind of scared you, and like, Mom, Dad, I really need to be where you are, right? Yeah, me too. Storms can be really scary sometimes, and this was probably the scariest storm we can possibly imagine. And it says that there was fire with the hail. Now, some people think, like the picture up there, that there was actually fireballs coming down. Other people said, no, we think it's just really, really bad lightning. Either way, it's scary, right? And Pharaoh called Moses and said, enough, make it stop. And so Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and stretched out his hands to the Lord. And the thunder and the hail ceased, and the rain no longer poured upon the earth. So the storm stopped. But think about this. Try to imagine this in your head. Pharaohs get called into the throne room. Or Moses gets called into Pharaoh's throne room, right? And they're talking. And Pharaoh's like, yeah, I'll let the people go. Just make this stop. This is terrible, terrible storm. And Moses like, okay. But it says he left Pharaoh's throne room. And what did he do? He went out of the city. Now, this isn't like a city like this. I mean, this city is probably maybe a mile across. I mean, it's a big city, okay? And Moses is walking from Pharaoh's throne out to the edge of the city. And what's happening while he's walking? Hail, lightning, fire, because it didn't cease until he got to the edge, right? Now, Bible doesn't say this, but I'm guessing that not a single hailstone touched Moses. I'm guessing he didn't even get wet in the rain. Can you imagine the people of Egypt watching Moses walk through the city and nothing touches him? Nothing touches him. when they've been seeing people who were outside died. But Moses walks through the city in front of everybody. And I'm pretty sure Yahweh protected him because he got to the edge and was able to pray, so he didn't die from the huge hailstones. So that's pretty cool, right? Okay, Hebrew letter of the week is Yod. And according to the Paleo letters there at the bottom, it can indicate an arm or a hand. And it's kind of like somebody's at work doing something. They're using their hands and their arms and they're lifting and carrying. That's the idea of Yod. And it carries the numerical value of 10. You knew that already, didn't you? No? Huh. Thought you guys were pretty good little Hebrew scholars. Okay, so a couple of words that start with Yod. The first one we know, that's Yahweh, right? Yod He Vav He. And the Paleo up there says it means, behold the hand, behold the nail. That reminds you of anybody? Who had a nail in their hand? Yeshua. Yeshua had a nail in his hand. That act that Yeshua did is in the very name of Yahweh, our Elohim. Okay? And the other one up there, that's Yehuda. That's the tribe of Judah, right? Which is the tribe that Yeshua came from, right? Tribe of Judah. So that also starts with a Yod. And that's how we make a Yod. Notice how short it is. It's the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and it only comes down halfway. So all the other letters are always bigger than the Yod. If you go back and look, you can see that, right? Look at Yahweh there. See how small the Yod is in comparison to the other letters? All right. Activities. So Miss Kathy was not able to get your activity sheets done, so I punted. I have some activity sheets for you. They're over there on the table if you want to get them. They're not as nice as Miss Kathy's, but hopefully you'll have some fun. Thanks.